The 90s. Such great times. Saturday morning cartoons ruled. Every kid and teen was high off Surge Soda and Pop Rocks. But there was one thing us 90 kids weren't quite ready for. And it took over an entire generation and was the talk of the schoolyard. And that was... Seriously, the world was not ready for this hype train, and it hit me harder than a blue shell in Mario Kart that sends you from first place to last, right before the finish line. From the colored spandex to the dinosaur theme and giant robots, this was every kid's wet dream. I mean, what wasn't there to love? That's today's topic, Power Rangers. And while there's multiple series spanning across 25 years, and since this year is the 25th year anniversary, I will focus solely on the Zordon era of the series, which is mostly Mighty Morphin and Zeo for the first part. The ones that most of us grew up watching, basically. So, get ready, it's Morphin time!
Oh, those goody two-shoe Warners! I'll get them, but how, I'm wondering?
Why don't you send your warriors down there to fight the Warners?
My warriors, of course, that's quite a plan!
We all know the famous line that recruited the Power Rangers. Alpha, recruit 5 teenagers with attitude. What's interesting though is everyone is asking why teenagers? How can they even handle that kind of responsibility? I know many will think adults would have been a much better choice, or even teenagers with no attitudes. I mean, we've all been teenagers. We know how arrogant and nasty and petty we can be. But the reason Zordon picks teens with attitude is because he doesn't want loyal warriors who will blindly follow him and his orders. He wants to be questioned and challenged. And who better to question and challenge him than teens with attitude? And when you're young, your moral compass isn't as damaged or corrupted as it is when you're an adult. I think we can all relate to that. The main cast consisted of Zack the Black Ranger, Billy the Blue Ranger, Trini the Yellow Ranger, Kimberly the Pink Ranger, and everyone's first crush. I mean, just look at her.
Perfection.
And finally, the leader and all-around badass, Jason the Red Ranger. Watching the show, these kids were more like teenage humanitarians than teenagers with attitudes. No, really, every episode, these people were either petitioning to save a park, or fundraising for a charity, or teaching kids a class at a youth center. I mean, they were more functioning than most adults I know, myself included. They're superheroes even without being Power Rangers already. My guess is that they did it to be a good example for kids. Not sure that it worked though, seeing as how every kid fought pretending to be Power Rangers at the playground. There was always that fight for who wanted to be Jason, and whoever didn't get him, got to be Zack. Nobody ever wanted to be Billy for some reason. I don't know why. The Rangers had to follow 3 rules in order to be Power Rangers, and keep the power. They must keep their identity of being a Power Ranger a secret. No fun in that. They can't use their powers for personal gain. I'm looking at you, Billy. None of that Revenge of the Nerds shit here. And last, they mustn't use it to escalate a battle, unless forced to. I don't know about that one. I'm not gonna wait for the putties or the monster to kick my ass in order to decide if I should morph or not. I'm gonna morph right away. The premise of the show is formulaic, with the main villain Rita sending down a monster to disrupt Angel Grove. The Rangers fight some putties, and then the monster of the week. Monster grows big, we get a big Megazord battle, and some cool standing poses, and the end. Looking back at it now though, it is a bit ridiculous with the poses and explosions. I mean, even the Rangers throw themselves to show that they got hurt. And for some reason they would always throw themselves backwards, even though the explosion happened behind them. I mean, they could have made it just a little bit more believable. But then again, this is a kids show, so don't expect much on acting and production side. There are many notable monsters during Mighty Morphin's 3-season run, however, ranging from threatening to just plain silly. Such as a rapping pumpkin. Yes, a pumpkin that raps.
Well, you think that's something you can do? Well, I got some friends who'd like to meet you. Attack now! Get 'em! Get 'em!
Because there's no better way to connect with kids than using hot rhymes and hip hop. Not the greatest monster, but we did get to see putties with pumpkin heads, just to capture the Halloween spirit. I'm sure many of you remember Pudgy Pig, Porky's fatter cousin. But he is somehow one of Mighty Morphin's more iconic monsters. How? I don't know. He did, however, eat the Ranger's power weapons, but he was defeated by eating a spicy sandwich. Pretty weak if you ask me. There are many other notable monsters, such as the Mighty Minotaur, Shell Shock, Dark Warrior, Commander Crayfish, and Oysterizer. Man, a bunch of these are really seafood related. But one monster that I do want to highlight is Twin Man, because not only could he create an imposter version of the Red Ranger, he also turned the putties into other imposter rangers as well. But the reason he is infamous is because he is voiced by none other than Walter White.
You're goddamn right.
Yeah, seriously, Bryan Cranston did his early work for Power Rangers. Too bad he had to do that awful movie though. Yeah, I think the monsters is what also helped boost the show's popularity. The hero is only as good as the villains, as they say. So, let's focus on Rita Repulsa.
After 10,000 years, I'm free!
A menacing witch with an iconic voice. Honestly, I don't think she would be as memorable if it wasn't for the voice of Barbara Goodson. Because whenever you think Rita, the voice just pops into your head. It's the shrill that shrieks of evil. It's even the voice I imagine when reading the Power Rangers comics. While she rarely, if ever, wins against the Rangers, some of her schemes are just downright terrifying and evil. And they really should hand her the victory, but since this is a kids show and the Rangers can't lose, some crazy Deus Ex Machina things happens that gets the Rangers out of trouble for some reason.
And that's not all.
What next?
Have we got an incredible surprise for you?
Another all-new episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
After X-Men.
Next Saturday morning.
Right here on Fox.
Character-wise, you won't really get much development. The Rangers are just genuinely good-hearted people. Yeah, once in a while one of them go bad, but it's not because they choose to do so. It's always because of mind control, or they are put under some kind of spell. That's not to say we don't get any development at all. There are episodes dedicated to a sole ranger that has them facing a personal challenge, or fear. And they're usually the one dealing the final blow to the monster of the week, to show that they've grown as a person and as a ranger. To highlight some of these episodes, we have one where Trini needs to overcome her fear of heights, to save Billy from a swarm of putties and also from falling off a cliff. For Jason, everyone's favorite ranger at the time, showcased his strength and badassery when he took on King Sphinx and Goldar alone, even when they went giant too. Not something any ranger can brag about. But the one ranger that surprised me the most is Kimberly. She's the popular, beautiful girl in school, wanted by all, and in Season 3 she drinks a potion that makes her fall in love with Skull, who's always been after her throughout the entire series, and after many attempts, finally gets a date with Kimberly. Lucky guy. But he is heartbroken when Kimberly finally breaks free of the spell, and shockingly, Kimberly comforts him to make sure he's feeling better. There is also an episode where Zack has to overcome his fear of spiders to save his fellow Rangers. But the episode I want to talk about is Island of Illusions, also known as the strangest episodes of Power Rangers I have ever seen. The Rangers are sent to another dimension, and also to the titular Island of Illusions, where they must face their greatest fears or disappear forever. And in order for them to overcome their fears, they must use self-confidence. Obviously. But to do so, they get the help of a small dwarf man, who seems to break the fourth wall multiple times in these two episodes, which is really weird. You guys should definitely watch this episode. It's very strange. But let's be real here. The best episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers came with the introduction of the 6th Ranger. I remember this being the talk of the playground. A new Ranger. And he was evil too. After many victorious battles against Rita, the Power Rangers had finally met their match in the Green Ranger. This story unfolded in the 5-part Green with Evil story arc, and I have to say, it's some of Power Rangers' best work. Tommy Oliver, the new kid in school, gets abducted by Rita and transformed into her evil Green Ranger. And remember how Jason used to be everyone's favorite? Nope, not anymore. The Green Ranger became a smash hit. Even his costume was better than the other Rangers. Equipped with the Dragon Shield and the Dragon Dagger, he took down the Rangers single-handedly multiple times during this story arc. He literally entered the Rangers' Megazords to fuck them up and then kicked them out of the Megazord, only to fuck them up again on the ground. And if you thought that was it, no, he even got to go giant. But best of all was his personal Megazord, the Dragon Zord. Clearly inspired by Godzilla, this majestic Megazord had a drill tail, finger missiles, and let's not forget that infamous summoning song. Power Rangers was already pretty popular by this time, but this introduction of Tommy skyrocketed it, and also made Tommy one of the longest serving Rangers. I think just about every kid hoped for him to join the ranks of the Rangers, and I can only imagine the excitement from the kids when he finally did. And poor Jason, from that moment on, he would be second fiddle, and probably will fuel the supposed beef between the two actors.
Power of the blowfish!
Power of the anteater!
Power of the platypus!
But Saban was not prepared for the popularity the Green Ranger would bring. That's because I'm sure many of you know, and if you don't, let me blow your mind right now. Power Rangers is made using Japanese footage from the show Super Sentai. And in the Japanese run of Power Rangers, Kyoto Sentai Zeo Ranger, the Green Ranger in this version dies, which limited the appearance Tommy could make in Power Rangers Morphed. And yes, as a kid, I thought Power Rangers was an American show. Like the uncultured swine I was, and the Japanese copied it. It's a genius move really, since a majority of the show is already filmed and they're in costumes most of the times, so only bits of the American parts needed to be filmed. As for dealing with the surge of demand of Power Rangers, Saban paid Toei for more footage. And in this footage, there were changes made to sync up with the American version of Power Rangers, such as the relationship between Tommy and Kimberly. While their Sentai counterparts had none, Tommy and Kimberly were the power couple of my generation. And for a show about fighting monsters and being superheroes, they developed these two quite a lot. For most of the series, there was always that will they, won't they aspect. Until recently, I found out that most people shipped Kimberly and Jason together. Fuck that, I am totally Team Tommy. I don't know what those people were smoking. But as I said before, Tommy's run as a Ranger was limited, and that was the focus of two arcs. The Green Candle, where Rita tries to drain Tommy's Green Ranger's powers for herself, and the Rangers fight to destroy the candle and end with a loss for the very first time, one of the few times that Rita gets a win. With Jason failing to beat Goldar and destroy the Green Candle, and Tommy ends up losing his powers. But not before transferring over his Dragon Shield and Dragon Dagger over to Jason, making him top Ranger once again. And maybe Jason just planned this so he could be the best Ranger again. After this power transfer, we got to see Jason wield the Dragon Shield and Dagger more often. But this was done more because to sync up with the footage sent over from Super Sentai, where the Green Ranger dies but passes on his powers to his younger brother, the Red Ranger. Dun dun dun! There's a plot twist you guys didn't know about. Power Rangers was supposed to be a one-season series, and no way Saban was gonna let that happen. This was their cash cow now. So, in Season 2 of Power Rangers, things got edgier, if you can even believe that, with new main villain Lord Zed, a really grotesque looking guy with exposed muscles and brains, and a skeletal armor frame. Lord Zed was more ruthless than Rita, and almost defeated the Rangers with their own Zords. And when he couldn't do that, he destroyed the dinosaurs. He tried to force Kimberly to marry him. Not that I blame him, she's a 90s heartthrob, but still, that's really evil, man. Lord Zed was a real threat. But what's unique about him is that he is the first ever created American villain for Power Rangers. Sorry to disappoint some of you guys, but yes, Rita Repulsa was used from stock footage of Super Sentai. And the only reason she ever spoke English was because of the voiceover acting. And when you watch it again, you'll see that the lips really don't match the words, which is pretty funny. But when Rita Repulsa does make a return in Season 2, she is replaced by an English-speaking actress, Carla Perez. However, her voice is still done by Barbara Goodson, because that's just too iconic to her character. In Season 2, we see more heavy use of American footage, mostly because the Japanese stock footage was starting to run out. And yes, while new footage was ordered from Toei, they kinda got screwed over though, because Saban signed a new deal for them to be able to use footage from the next series, Gosei Sentai Dai Ranger, which is where the Thunderzords came from. So any footage that Toei filmed before was kind of deemed unusable because it contained footage from the Zeo Rangers. And that's the production explanation of how the Power Rangers get from Dinozords to Thunderzords. In the early episodes of Season 2, however, they had to splice footage of the Megazord battles, because the monsters that they were fighting was still technically from old footage. However, the Thunderzords was from the current series at the time, so the monster and the Megazord never really made face-to-face contact, or they never really showed them together in the same scene. That's one way to save money on production. But back to Lord Zed. He's probably one of the best villains of Power Rangers because he single-handedly eliminated the Green Ranger powers, thus arguably removing the best Ranger from the team. But production-wise, it's because the Green Ranger, or better yet, the Dragon Ranger, was never in Dai Ranger, or the Dragon Zord was never in the arsenal of the Dai Rangers. Lord Zed made most of his attacks really personal on the Power Rangers, and if it wasn't for parents' complaints, he could have been even more ferocious. Unfortunately, he had to be toned down a bit. He was deemed too scary for TV. And they did that by having him marry Rita Repulsa, which made the two a bit more comedic and loosened them up a bit. Together though, they did come up with some great schemes, such as creating an evil clone of Tommy with the powers of the Green Ranger. Losing those Green Ranger powers really came to bite him back in the ass. Season 2 also brought many changes to the series, with a new Ranger to be introduced yet again, the White Ranger. And who else but Tommy to wield the power and become the new leader of the Power Rangers. We also got introduced to new Rangers, Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. And this was done because the actors portraying Jason, Zack, and Trini were leaving over contract disputes. So they had to get new replacements, and also transfer over the leadership of the Power Rangers over to Tommy. What was crazy though is that those three actors left way before the episode the power transfer could be completed. So the production team had to be really clever on hiding those angles of the actors' faces, using body doubles and old voice lines to cover the morph sequences. The new Rangers fit in well with the rest of the team. The most obvious thing was the race switching of the yellow and black Rangers. I guess there was just some sort of controversy saying it was racist of the show to have the Black Ranger be black and the Yellow Ranger to be Asian. I never had any problems with it, and neither did the actors as well, since Walter Jones, who was Zack, and Tui Trang, who was Trini, said that they can be more recognizable as the Yellow and Black Rangers respectively. The Rangers face doom when their Zords, power coins, and connection to the morphing grid is destroyed by Rita's brother, Rito Revolto. Really creative there with the name, guys. This led to the Rangers receiving their ninja powers and ninja Zords. Seriously, with all this new merchandise, my parents' wallets could only take so much. This was the start of the third and final season of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The Rangers receiving their ninja powers was done to cash in on the effects of the Power Rangers movie, where they also received their ninja powers but in a very much different way. With the Rangers receiving their ninja powers from an ancient temple, while in the series it is Ninjor who grants them their ninja powers. Who also turned out to be the creator of the original Power Coins, and also just happens to be Dudley Do-Right, morphed. There is definitely a reference to Dragon Ball here, with Ninjor often flying into battle on top of a cloud. And if it's not, I'm saying it is. Season 3 also introduced another villain, Master Vile, the father of Rito Repulsa and Rito Revolto. You can see the family resemblance. Master Vile comes to Earth to retrieve the Zeo Crystal, which he almost succeeds in doing so, if it wasn't for the Rangers destroying it into 5 pieces and scattering it across the Earth. In revenge, Master Vile watches Superman and reverses time on Earth by having the Earth rotate backwards, and turning the Rangers back into children. And again, the Power Rangers team faced another change as well, with Kimberly leaving the team and being replaced by Catherine, who was a villain early in the season. It truly was the start of the end of an era. With Kimberly leaving, there goes everyone's first crush. Season 3 also ended with a huge cliffhanger. With the command center destroyed, the ninja powers gone, what were the Rangers to do? Find out next time on Power Rangers. With a new threat looming in the form of the Machine Empire, the Ranger team harnessed the power of the Zeo Crystal to become the Zeo Rangers. A major change in the status quo, and once again, kids were excited about Power Rangers. New Ranger suits, weapons, and Zords. Zeo, a word that was entirely made up for this series alone, was adapted from Churuki Sentai All Ranger, and again, used stock footage from its Sentai counterpart heavily. With Season 2 and 3 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers using more American footage than previously, they kinda had to cut back on production here. So having a series that they could heavily use footage from, that's a money saver right there. Zeo wasn't always my favorite. I found it weird at first and didn't really follow it much. It wasn't until I watched it again that this series is really underrated. While the villains are a bit more forgettable, such as King Mondo, Louis Kaboom, and Prince Gasket, the stories in it aren't. Some of my favorites include the ongoing mystery of the Gold Ranger's identity. But first, let's just admire this Ranger suit. Definitely one of the best looking ones ever. The black on gold color scheme is magnificent. So yeah, the Gold Ranger's identity was a long running mystery on the show. And kudos to the writers for proving everyone wrong. It came down to Billy, Tommy's brother David, and surprisingly, Skull. And can you guess who it was? Answer is neither of them. It was a whole new character entirely, Trey of Triforia. I don't know if Triforia is a reference to the Triforce from Zelda, since the Triforce is gold and the Gold Ranger is from Triforia. I really like to think so, since I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan. The Gold Ranger powers were eventually passed down to another former Ranger. No, not Billy. Sorry, you're gonna be written out of the show eventually. It was Jason, surprisingly. And they really held on to that reveal in the episode, having him wear a trench coat and bandana to cover himself. But now, it was Jason's turn to be the 6th Ranger. It was a great move, since it brought back old fans, and it brought a new dynamic with Jason and Tommy. With Tommy being the leader now, he often turned to Jason for advice, given his past experience of being the leader of the Rangers. And their friendship was put to the test when Tommy was kidnapped and brainwashed into thinking that he was the king of the Machine Empire. It gave fans a dose of the 2 best Rangers fighting each other, and a bit of a role reversal from the Mighty Morphin era. I saw this story as a bit of a redemption arc for Jason. Failing to save Tommy's powers in the Green Candle story, he now had a chance to save his friend again. Zeo is unique that it's the first time that the main villain is destroyed mid-season, with King Mondo being destroyed by the Zeo Ultra Zord. And for Zeo's series finale, it's the first and only time the Rangers are made giant to fight a reborn King Mondo. It was a cool and unique way to end the series. Unfortunately, the monsters in Zeo aren't as iconic as others, with only buckets of bolts and the Midas monster sticking out the most to me. Billy also leaves the show in Zeo, serving as only a tech expert and no longer being a ranger. He is written out as rapidly aging due to the effects of his aging machine back in Mighty Morphin, and stayed on the planet Aquitar, home of the alien rangers, to find a cure. In reality though, the actor David Yaws was just tired of being harassed for being gay, so he left the show.
We need dinosaur power now!
Before I end this video though, there's one aspect I really do want to talk about, which is probably my favorite part of any Ranger series, and that is the Zords. The Zords are a staple to any Power Ranger series, and for me, can make or break it. The Mighty Morphin team has the largest arsenal of Zords for the Zordon era, ranging from the Dino Zords to the Thunder Zords, Ninja Zords, and finally, the Shogun Zords. As a kid, I only knew about the Dino Zords and the Ninja Zords because of the movie. It wasn't until I was in my teens that I finally learned about the Thunder Zords. As for the Shogun Zords, I knew of them thanks to a comforter my cousin had, but never seen it in the show. Until I rewatched it, that is. Unique only to Power Rangers and the Mighty Morphin team is that they use Zords that isn't from the original Sentai series, with the Thunder Zords being from Dai Ranger, the Ninja Zords and the Shogun Zords from Kaku Ranger, with the cockpit footage being American made only, along with custom Zord cockpits. Shockingly, the Ultra Zord for the Dino, Ninja, and Shogun all use Titanus, despite Titanus never being part of the Dai Rangers or the Kaku Rangers arsenal. So for Power Rangers, they actually had to use the toys to form the Ultra Zord, which looks really funny as they try to superimpose the image of it. And strangely enough, it still used the chest piece from the Dragon Zord, despite never making an appearance with the new Zords. The Zeo Zords were unique and is the first man-made Zords for Power Rangers, with Billy designing them in the series. It's a unique design with the Zords having very little to do with the Zeo motive, whatever that is. But it could change helmets that gave it different abilities, from controlling lightning, telekinesis, and finally the Power Sword. Pyramidus was the Gold Ranger's personal Zord, and one of the most unique looking Zords to date. It's a large pyramid. As a kid, I was a bit let down because the previous 6 Rangers had a Dragon Zord, and then the Tiger Zord came along, and now we get a pyramid. It served as a carrier Zord to form the Zeo Ultra Zord, with the other Zeo Zords entering Pyramidus to form its warrior mode, and finally just blasting all the monsters into oblivion. The Zeo Rangers do get an upgrade midway through the show with the Super Zeo Zords, and that was just basically humanoid versions of themselves, and really powerful too, with each one able to defeat a monster on its own. Also one of the more colorful looking Zords too. I had this Megazord toy. I also believe it's my first Megazord toy ever as well. Ah man, good times playing with the Super Zeo Zord. The Super Zeo Zord was often accompanied by the Warrior Wheel, the Zord Jason had to use during his tenure as the Gold Ranger.
Good job, Super Siblings. We've saved a lot from harm.
Well, my fellow Rangers, that is part 1 of the Zordon era Power Rangers Retrospect. I know I may have left some things out or not go into much details in other areas. I just didn't realize just how colossal Mighty Morphin was. But I would love to do more in-depth analysis either season by season or just other categories. So please, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a part 2 covering Turbo and In Space, or any other Power Rangers material. Also, if you missed the Mighty Morphin team, check out Boom Comics' run of Power Rangers. It's more funable. And they have their first big crossover event called Shattered Grid coming in the end of March. I hope you guys enjoyed and are doing well. This is Geek Knight, signing off.